Did you know that the Titanic had shocking hygiene practices? Step aboard the Titanic and discover how class dictated hygiene on the ship. From luxurious facilities for first-class passengers to mandatory medical examinations and lice checks for steerage passengers, the Titanic had it all. So join us as we reveal the surprising secrets of how hygiene was maintained on the Titanic, with some survivors' accounts and shocking stories of those who did not make it. Get ready for an unforgettable journey into the past and a shocking look at the Titanic's dirty secrets. Class dictated hygiene on the Titanic. First-class passengers enjoyed luxurious facilities, while third class had to prove their cleanliness to board. Food was abundant, and passengers enjoyed state-of-the-art amenities in public and private spaces. Even in steerage, travelers had access to regular meals, electricity, and other comforts. The Titanic was advertised as the queen of the ocean, and it lived up to the hype. The ship was clean, shiny, and almost everything it promised to be. Passengers spent their days and nights in awe of the magnificent vessel and the care they received at every turn. Titanic's first-class passengers were treated to a range of luxurious amenities, including access to the opulent Victorian Turkish bath. Despite an extra fee, passengers purchased tickets to use the Turkish bath and the nearby swimming pool. The facility boasted steam and massage rooms with attendants on standby, as well as an electric bath resembling a modern tanning bed designed to warm the body. Separate male and female hours were established for Turkish bath access. Records show that the two female attendants, Annie Cotton and Maud Slocum, survived the shipwreck while their male counterparts did not. The majority of Titanic passengers did not have access to bathtubs, with only a select few cabins featuring private ones. Captain Edward Smith was among those with a private bathtub, which was made of porcelain and could be filled with fresh or seawater. The luxurious parlor suite accommodations on B deck were the only other cabins with private bathtubs, along with multiple bedrooms, closets, and private decks. Charlotte Cardessa occupied one parlor suite, while White Star Line chairman J. Bruce Ismay and his attendants were in the other. To ensure cleanliness, attendants manned the public bailing facilities on each deck of the Titanic. Passengers who lacked personal bathing facilities had to make appointments with bath stewards or stewardesses. The first and second class decks had more bathtubs available than third class. The latter shared two, with one designated for males and the other for females. The task of maintaining hygienic conditions fell on the bath stewards and stewardesses, who sterilized the facilities after each use. A few of them, namely Charles Mackay, James Wiggery, and Frank Morris, survived the tragedy of the Titanic and recounted their experiences later. Unfortunately, bathroom stewards Herbert George Broom, Thomas Pennell, and George Hinckley lost their lives in the disaster. Interestingly, only passengers of the third class could avail themselves of the automated toilets on the ship. The Titanic's cabins featured water closets and sinks, but the toilets in the first and second classes had to be manually flushed. Passengers in these classes were familiar with this process, having used it on land before. On the other hand, toilets in the third class were equipped with automatic flushing. The reason for this was the concern that steerage passengers might not be familiar with toilets, having used outhouses and chamber pots in the past. To ensure that they flushed properly, automatic flushing was introduced. Matron Catherine Wallace provided aid to third-class passengers on the Titanic, including teaching immigrants how to use the toilet. She remained with the passengers she was tasked with caring for during the sinking and sadly lost her life along with them. To prevent the spread of lice disease on the Titanic, third-class passengers underwent mandatory medical and lice examinations before boarding. Unlike first and second class passengers, those with steerage tickets had to meet with a group of surgeons led by Dr. William Francis Norman O'Laughlin and inspection officials outside the ship. Passengers were inspected and given an inspection card as a boarding pass if they were deemed clean and healthy. These measures were taken to ensure the safety and health of all passengers aboard the ship. O'Laughlin, a senior surgeon with the White Star Line and on board the Titanic, was responsible for the ship's medical staff. Dr. Simpson assisted second and third class passengers, while William Dunford served as the hospital steward. Evelyn Martin, a stewardess, was available to first class passengers, while Catherine Wallace acted as a matron in third class. O'Loughlin and Simpson also inspected the crew and confirmed their health and readiness to Captain Clark, the Board of Trade immigration officer. After Dunford's death, a thermometer was found among his belongings. The Titanic had numerous public restrooms with stalls, commodes, and sinks for men and women. Some of the first-class passenger restrooms may have featured Venolia soap, advertised as the ship's preferred option. Venolia promoted its auto toilet soap as gentle and ideal for sensitive skin and delicate complexions. These facilities were widespread and easily accessible throughout the ship. Personal maids and servants were common among the high-class passengers on the Titanic. Although the ship provided stewards and stewardesses, many first and second-class travelers brought their own secretaries and assistants. These individuals were responsible for the grooming and dressing of their patrons, augmenting the ship's resources. The personal attendants served a higher standard of toilet luxury and comfort at sea, reflecting the opulence and excess of the time. Servants on the Titanic were considered superior to the crew and were provided with silver-plated napkin rings etched with the word servant. They were given some relief with access to facilities like the barber shop. The barber shops offered haircuts and washing services during the afternoon hours for first-class passengers and their second-class companions. Shaves were available at all times. Stewards on the Titanic took care of dogs brought by first-class passengers, with around 12 canines on board. The ship had a kennel on the F deck, managed by John Hutchinson and his team of bellboys. Smaller dogs stayed in their owners' cabins, and all were walked daily on the poop deck and cleaned up after. There were also roosters and hens on board, belonging to passenger Ella Holmes White, while the ship's resident cat, Jenny, gave birth to kittens before setting sail. Many men were employed by Titanic to handle the dishwashing. Since cookware and cutlery were made of the finest materials, cleaning them before use would have been crucial. Thousands of forks, spoons, and knives were provided along with bone china dinnerware that was lined with gold leaf. Hundreds of dinner plates, bowls, saucers, and other serving utensils were used every day, along with silver-plated napkin rings. Although the Titanic had at least 5 plate stewards, Charles Edward Light, Frederick William Hopkins, Sidney George Hisks, E. Hogue, and Frederick Humby, all of whom perished in the sinking, it is unclear how dishes and utensils were cleaned on board. Busboys and plate washers were plate stewards. On board, there were also assistant glass, plate, and assistant plate washers. On board the Titanic, the crew had small quarters. The crew's quarters were on the lower decks. A room with 54 beds was used by firefighters to sleep in the rooms on D-deck. As many as 42 second-class stewards and 34 third-class stewards could be crammed into one room for each class on a deck, where most of the crew slept in dormitory-style quarters. Although the living conditions along Scotland Road, the name given to the passage that ran next to the steward quarters on a deck, seemed modest, they were significantly better than the ones boiler room and engine crewmen had to put up with. There were undoubtedly dangerous fumes inhaled by everyone near the boiler room, given the quantity of asbestos used in boilers installed on passenger ships built by Harland and Wolff, the Belfast-based company hired to build the Titanic and her sister ship, the Olympic. Thank you for joining us on this shocking journey into the hygiene practices of the Titanic. We've seen how class dictated hygiene on the ship, from luxurious amenities for first-class passengers to mandatory medical examinations and lice checks for steerage passengers. We've explored the opulent Victorian Turkish bath, private bathtubs, and automated toilets, as well as the public restrooms available throughout the ship. We've heard the stories of the bath stewards and stewardesses, personal maids and servants, and medical staff who worked tirelessly to maintain cleanliness and hygiene on the Titanic. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this fascinating and surprising look at the Titanic's dirty secrets. If so, then like this video and share your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, subscribe to our channel for more fascinating and surprising happenings in our history. See you in our next video.